sure everything working the way it's supposed to be. And we can get this show on the road. Where we at? All right. So glad to be back with you for another episode of Soul Swami Live. I am Anthony, otherwise known as Soul Swami. If this is what we do here, is we create a collective energy of people or a tribe of people who are doing their best to evolve and become the best version of themselves, are healed through some of their past experiences. And we do that because healing is a communal event. So many times we think that we're supposed to do these things by ourselves, but if you want to go farther, you got to do it with a group. So this is us creating a collective energy to help support that and let us know that we are not alone in this evolution of becoming the best version of ourselves. We generally meet every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thursday is a spinoff of our Tuesday night show. Tuesday we do a little more information and activities that support our mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being. And then on Thursdays, it's a spinoff. We create an energy that allows us to connect with that childlike energy in us by doing various things. We started with book club. We're doing a puzzle now, and we'll do some other things like that remind you that it is okay to do some of the things that brought you so much joy when you were a little younger. Again, this is every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Instagram. So make sure you did that follow, subscribe, or whatever you need to do so you can get that notification of when we go live. Generally, at the beginning of every show, we do a little bit of energy work, and this week we are on our sacral, which resides right below our navel, and it definitely does include your sexual organs. So all that area down there. The sacral is a focal point for your sensuality, your sense of pleasure, your emotions, your creativity, and your relationships, how you function within relationships, right? If you are into color therapy, the color for the sacral is orange. So you want to wear some orange clothes, eat some orange food, spend some time in some orange light, whatever you can do that allows you to connect with that color orange and focus on your sacral energy. If you are into aromatherapy, you want to think rose, patchouli, orange, clary sage. All of those are very good examples of aromas that support the healthy energy of your sacral. If you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think tiger's eye, carnelian, amber, orange calcite, citrine bronzite. All of those are good examples of stones that help support that energy. So the next thing we do is a little bit of sound therapy. I brought the flute out, so I might play it. I don't know. I'm not feeling the flute right now, so I may just listen to my spirit. But I might change my mind after we do the bowl. So we're going to start with the bowl. Then after that, we'll do a little bit of breath work and then affirmations, and we'll roll right into the show. During this time, all you really have to do is just relax and listen to the sounds and let them do what they do. Be focused on your breathing, making sure you're establishing the energy you want to have during this session, and get rid of the stress and worries of the day so you can focus in on yourself in your healing, in your evolution, and your well-being. Hmm. Y'all know this is probably quickly become my favorite instrument of all the sound instruments that I use. So I hope you love it as much as I do. The next thing we will do is some breath work. I think tonight is a good night for triangle breathing. If you are unfamiliar with breathing exercises, the numbers generally, depending on the exercise, the numbers tell you how long to inhale for, how long to hold your breath for, and then how long to exhale. So in triangle breathing, we inhale for 3, hold for 3, and exhale for 3. But during this time, all you really have to do is just listen to the sound of my voice, focus in on your own energy, pay attention to your breathing and the thoughts that come into your mind during this time, and get prepared for the next section. On the count of 3, we will start with triangle breathing. 1, 2, 3. Inhale 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Last time, family. Breathe in 3, 2, 3. Hold 3, 2, 3. Release 3, 2, 3. Now, the next thing we'll do is some affirmations. I want you to repeat these affirmations after me and begin to incorporate them into your life and your routines as a gentle reminder of how valuable you are, how important you are, and how worthy you are. Again, just repeat the affirmations after me. I am a creative being. I deserve to enjoy life. I am emotionally balanced. I welcome sensuality into my life. I am worthy and lovable. I am a creative being. I deserve to enjoy life. I am emotionally balanced. I welcome sensuality into my life. And I am worthy and lovable because you are. All right, family. Now let's get to the meat of the show. Do. Maybe I don't know. I think I'm on changing the theme music, making a new beat so we can have some new theme music. But, you know how it goes. As soon as we start the show, I'll sit here, no notifications, no sounds. As soon as we start the show, it's a party. Do. This is also your reminder that you can purchase the 7 Spaces of Healing for yourself. It is a good foundational book to help you conceptualize 7 valuable and useful spaces that you want to cultivate within yourself, and also make sure that you are a part of these spaces to support your evolution. Interesting. They are a space for love, a space for healing, a space for solitude, a space for trust, a space for risk without judgment, a space for accountability, and a space for forgiveness. You can purchase this book yourself, available now on Amazon. Miss Sarah, thank you so much. I appreciate you as always for supporting the channel, supporting me, and just being an all-around good person, right? So thank you for finding some value in this book. I don't know what the next book is going to be. I've been talking about a book on identity because identity was a huge portion, and I think that identity thing is what causes a lot of people to not do the work that they need. But also been thinking of using this curriculum and instruction degree and create some sort of curriculum that we can do together. So I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. So, general conversation right now. Last week, if you were able to catch last Thursday's show, it was an amazing show for me, right? It was a little bit different because, Thursdays is usually our calm and quiet type day. But this Thursday, I was invited to join a group for low vision and people with blindness. And I honestly didn't even know what to expect, right? So much of our lives is based on the visual, but there are so many other things that support how we function, right? And one of the more interesting things that came out of that meeting was how they heard me, right? So when we started the meeting, I was just talking a little bit regularly. I was talking so I felt regularly, talking how I talk to you all, talking how I talk pretty much often. But one thing that they started complimenting me on in the beginning was my energy. They were like, I'm bringing so much energy and excitement, and I couldn't necessarily hear that in my voice, but I respected that these people are masters with other senses that I do not have the same level of mastery with, right? So, I always think my gift is hearing. That's one of my gifts. I received messages through the wind. So when they were using their vocal wind to express to me about the energy that I was bringing, I had no choice but to receive it. And I love it because you do this work or we do this work and you really don't know how it is changing you until someone else pointed out. I have a friend that's been telling me at least almost weekly or every other week that I sound different. And my reply is always, I'm changing. And I don't always know how to verbalize that, but I'm thankful that I can hear it. Now, this group was, as a matter of fact, I always talk about our men's group on Monday, and it was the more mature version of the men's group. And they just had a different thing. So they meet on Zoom. They have the topics that they want to talk about. And on Thursday, they invited me to be a part of their mental health and awareness. We did a great activity that was around mindfulness. And we did a meditation that was called the chair, which you wind up creating a space for you to sit with the emotions, process the emotions, and if you choose to, have a conversation with those emotions to facilitate you being able to release some of these emotions or internalize some of these emotions. Because we started off with good emotions and it branched into different things. And then we talked about the activity that we always do. Well, not always, that we've done several times to find out what our relationship word of the time period, whether it's the year, whether it's the month, whether it's the week, our relationship word, where, we got safety, we got worthy, we got family. We did that activity with them and I enjoyed it. They were so active. They participated. They dropped jewels. So they gave responses. They received responses. And it was really a great space to be a part of. And I was thankful that they trusted me or entrusted me with helping them through a meditation that they can cope with. Now, the person that invited me, we had a conversation, so they gave me some idea on how the group functions, but nothing in our conversation could have prepared me for how wonderful and beautiful the experience was. It was really, I don't want to say it was my first, because I do group meetings in various settings, but it was my first in that type of situation, right? I really haven't done, I just never done anything kind of like that, or even to the type of people that I was actually interacting with. So I loved it. Great, 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 great. Also, which is kind of ironic. Over the last kind of weeks, we talk about celebrating those small victories, and those small victories, we have to really be open and aware. So when they show up, we know what they are and how to celebrate. And one of the things that the last couple of weeks have afforded me is the opportunity to vocalize my nose, saying my nose, right? The ironic thing about this is when it comes to me and no, I generally am one of those people who do my voting with my feet. I do my root chakra, and you'll know my no because I will disappear, right? But I've also noticed how in some of these situations where I choose to vote with my feet or with my root and walk away, there is a space for me to be able to communicate, because when I don't communicate my no's and why I say no, people have the luxury to say that they don't know why, right? So, in interacting with people and meeting new people, I've been able to be like, hey, it was a great conversation, but I don't think I want to talk to you anymore. Or, hey, I appreciate the opportunity, but we're two different people. We're looking for different things. So I don't want to deal with that anymore. And I'm proud of myself, right? And one of the reasons I'm proud of myself, because it kind of builds on this thing that I've been working on for the last year and a half, maybe even 2 years. And that is communicating my needs, my wants, and who I am, right? Moving beyond just allowing voting with my feet, but communicating these things. It started with the birthday thing where I actually told people some things I wanted for my birthday, and I got some birthday gifts. But it really is us being able to strengthen our tool of communication by communicating our yeses, our nos, our needs, and who we are. The more we learn about who we are, the more we have to communicate who we are to people. The only way that they're going to really be able to know us, what makes us tick, what we like, what we don't like, is if we communicate them. Now, there's a space for observation where they can observe and they can see some things, but they don't know what the motivation is based on their observations, right? So we are communicating those things, and I hope that you've been having this same shared experience where you've been in a space where you've either been forced or you've given yourself permission to communicate your needs, wants, and who you are to any and everyone who is willing to listen. All right, so the next thing we'll do is our review. Last week, I think we did, not I think, but I know, we did the doer ego. We asked ourselves a couple of questions to see how we are functioning within our doer ego. And then, let me see. Is it doer ego? It's moral righteous ego. Make sure I get to the doer ego. Okay, doer ego. This is a quick review on what the doer ego is. The doer ego is the part of us that builds our identity. Oh my God, this big flute. Forgive me, I just keep moving around. That builds our identity. Man, we won't worry about it. Around doing, achieving, producing, fixing, helping, and accomplishing goals or accomplishing tasks that we establish for ourselves, right? It pretty much grounds itself in progress, control, and results, right? Which is why the doer ego, when we are not functioning in a healthy way, we can be very hard and critical on ourselves because we find our value, our self-worth in progress, in being in control or having control and creating results, coming to those results, right? A healthy doer ego helps us to take responsibility, pursue our goals, and contribute meaningfully to life and relationships within that life. If we are functioning in our doer ego in an unhealthy way, we wind up tying our self-worth to performance and believe that value comes from constant motion and achievement. Those are the people that we see that struggle to relax and rest, or those people who have their family or children so busy because we are functioning in a negative way with our doer ego, even though we may have good intentions. You know, we talk about it all the time. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Good intentions are not enough to make sure we have healthy results, right? So, constant motion and achievement, constant action, not just necessarily motion, because emotions are energy in motion, but constant action, right? Some of the questions that we asked ourselves is around how we function with achievement and productivity. Things like, how important is it for me to stay busy? Do I struggle to relax without feeling guilty? We talked about how we function in our doer ego around this idea of responsibility and control. Do I feel responsible for things that I may not actually be mine to carry, that may not actually be mine to carry? Do I frequently try to fix problems? We also discussed how we interact with success and failures within our doer ego. How do I feel when I meet my goal? Or do I feel pride or shame based on the outcomes? We talked about how we function within our doer ego as well as it relates to busyness and rest. Is my schedule full because I choose it or because I fear slowing down? That fear of missing out, the fear of rest and relaxation. Sleep is the cousin to death. Saying things like that, I'll get sleep when I'm dead. All those things are statements or cliches that we normalize or normalize us functioning within our doer ego in a negative and unhealthy way. So this week, we are moving into the moral ego, or moral or righteous ego. Moral or righteous ego. Forgive me, family. I'm a little thirsty. I'm not even gonna lie to you, bro. I love cold water. You can say whatever you want to by room temperature, and scientifically, I know it to have some value and be true. But you want me to drink water? Gotta be cold. The colder, the better. Right. So, moral or righteous ego, same thing. Moral or righteous ego. What is the moral or righteous ego? It's the part of ourselves that builds our identity around being good, around being ethical, responsible, fair, and virtuous, or doing the right thing. Build our ego or builds our identity around being good, ethical, responsible, fair, virtuous, or doing the right thing. When we are functioning within our moral ego in a healthy way, it helps us live according to our values and act with integrity. which is very important. It's ironic because integrity has been my word of this year, and it has been showing me a lot of things that I did not apply to integrity are reflective of how you are moving with integrity. So it is, again, living our life according to our values, acting with integrity, and contributing positive to others. Not just being having integrity within ourselves, but we contribute that same positivity to others as well, right? One of the things that was interesting to me was I didn't really recognize that I was working on my moral ego when I made integrity the word for this, one of my words for this year, one of the things that I'm working on this year. I really didn't recognize that until one, we started studying ego and got to the moral ego, and then I started paying attention to some of the things that people are saying to me that feed into my moral ego, right? So one thing, a perfect example of this is I was talking to my homeboy, where one of my closest friends. Winds up being one of my many spiritual advisors to support me, at least in the path that I'm on as it relates to this dynamic. Then I have spiritual advisors in other dynamics as well. And I was talking to him about a relationship that I've had with a friend, and we decided to move forward in that relationship. And as soon as we move forward in that relationship, like literally a day or two, we wind up going back 2 steps, right? And I'm telling my homeboy, I'm telling my brother this story about this, and something he says to me, which ties within a healthy moral ego, is you are an asset to any relationship. That ties into that idea where you contributed positively to relationships or to others. So even though I was in a space where I could not see that, I was thankful that I had the support of one of my friends to point out that, right? That I'm an asset to any relationship. That is a moral ego thing because I contribute positive to any relationship, right? So, and if you know me, I do really do my best to be righteous, right? Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always righteous because, I'm a proud Pisces. So I have that duality where one foot is in the light, one foot is in the dark. I enjoy the darkness just as much as I enjoy the light. And I also understand that out of darkness, let there be light. Without my relationship to this darkness, I would not be able to appreciate and value the light that comes out of it, right? So that was a a huge, not necessarily great, but a huge connection that I was able to draw with the support of one of my 7 healthy spaces, right? A space for accountability, right? Which winds up doing that. Now, if we are functioning within our moral ego in an unhealthy way, unhealthy moral ego, we wind up attaching our value to being right, being virtuous, or morally superior. You literally can see this dynamic all the time online, all the time. And the moral ego is fine is very amazing on how these things overlap. We treat them as separate, but they're more like that Venn diagram because our knowledge ego also ties into this being right, right? But the moral ego um is about being right, virtuous, or morally superior. You see people who always think that their answer is the right answer. I literally had a couple of conversations or exchanges with people online where I had to tell them, listen, I don't have to say what you would want me to say. It's not my space. It's your mind. You say what you want to say. Do not try to tell me I'm wrong because my thoughts don't incorporate what you would say. Say say what you say and leave the space for me to have my own idea, right? Also, this unhealthy moral ego creates a space where we may ourselves and others when the expectations judge ourselves and others harshly when the expectations are not met. In our men's group on Monday, one of the things that we talked about in our discussion was talking about reshaping our expectations of others. We have a tendency to expect people to respond to the situations the same way that we would, and we don't leave space for the other possibilities in how to respond to this, right? And when it doesn't happen like that, we wind up being harsh on ourselves or harsh on others because the expectations aren't met, because or they're not even theirs or ours to meet. They're not someone else's to meet. It's our expectations we have for ourselves. It's unfair for us to place that on someone else with the expectation that with the understanding that our expectations or how we feel is the right way to do it, right? Right. It really is about being comfortable with delegation and allowing people to be who they are. So now we'll get into the questions to help us assess how we are functioning within our moral ego. How are we functioning within our moral ego? First, we'll think about how it relates to this idea of goodness and our identity. First question. Don't forget, you can join live to have a energy reading. And don't forget that you also can put your responses in the chat if you feel comfortable enough to share and vulnerable enough to be able to allow other people to see parts of you that you may or may not share with other people. Hey, thanks for joining. I appreciate you. I see you over there on YouTube. We're just assessing, so you can answer these questions if you have the time to be able to see how you are functioning within your moral ego, your ego as it relates to morality, right? First is goodness and identity. First question is, how important is it for me to see myself as a good person? Is that who you are, Trevor McDonald? Thanks for joining then, brother. I appreciate you. Thank, thank you. I appreciate the compliment on my beard. Thank you. This beard has gone through many stages. Sometimes I have a full beard. I used to grow my beard long. I used to have that long kung fu theater beard, all types of things. So I thought about growing it again, but I'm in a process of making sure I love myself through all the seasons of my life. Okay. Congratulations. So, first question. How important is it for you to see yourself as a good person? How important is it for you to see yourself as a good person? For me, it is, I can't really say the level of importance, but it is somewhat important, right? It is. I do value. I know about reputation, and when people are talking about me or how my reputation precedes me, I do want that the part that they say about me. I do. Hey, I appreciate you. Thank you for the compliment. I really do hope that people do find something. I appreciate you joining and adding to the collective energy and seeing the value of being able to grow and evolve into the best version of yourself. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, brother. Now, as far as a good person, I really do have the best intentions, right? Even though we talked about how intentions aren't always hold on, family. I don't think my I don't know. Let me see what's cracking. All right. There we go. Did we get rid of it? All right. I appreciate you because I definitely was about to. Listen, this the wrong space for that. We have a very positive energy. We like to, you know what I mean, keep it on this healing and evolution. So I appreciate that. Um, Thank you. So, so it is again. It is kind of important for me to be able to be seen as good, right? I really don't know the level of importance or how to fully describe that, but I do value it. It is important for me to be able to be seen as a good person. I try to do good things in the world. I try to make people's lives a little easier. That's one of the reasons why, when I was supervising people or in a space of leadership, that the people that I led really did appreciate me because they saw, which is one of the questions we're gonna ask later. They saw my efforts and they valued my efforts. Morgan Freeman is funny. I guess that's better than Cool Modi and sound like Morgan Freeman. I guess that's better than look like Morgan Freeman. I know that Salt and Pepper be doing some things, but yeah, I appreciate it. I receive compliments made in good faith. I don't know. Is your friend on this? So the next question is: do I define myself by my values, integrity, or moral standards? I definitely did value myself. Do you value yourself by your integrity, your values, integrity, or moral standards? Moral standards. My values, I definitely used to define myself by my value, what's important to me, and what I need out of life, or what my guiding principles are. And I definitely did or do value myself when it comes to my moral standards, right? That's that idea of being righteous. That's that idea of trying to do the minimizing the harm that I may cause to other people. The one that I really didn't value myself, which makes it no surprise to me that it is my word for the year, is integrity. I never really valued myself or found my value in integrity. I just assumed because I valued being good and I had some sort of moral standards that I just assumed that I was moving in integrity, right? But now as I thank you. Now as I focus in on this idea of integrity, I get to see the value of moving in integrity and and seeing all the different things that go into shaping what we call integrity, right? Taking responsibility, taking accountability, being a person of your word, moving with goodness. You know what I mean? Having good intentions. All of these things help to shape integrity, right? So as I learn more about integrity, I'll be able to find a little bit more value, or the value that moving with integrity winds up having, right? Now, the caution of that is I also have to recognize that I am still more than just these words. These words are not just enough to define me. As a matter of fact, it kind of feels like a bio, right? Whether you're on your page or a dating site or anything like that, they ask you to do this bio. I wrote a book, I had to do a bio, right? And as I learn a bit more, and or when people say this is not enough space within these 500 characters to describe who I am, to tell you who I am. That's what this kind of feels like, right? So I am more than these words can describe. Next thing. Woo. Next question is, how stressed do I become when I make a mistake or fall short of my ideas? I think, how stressed do you become when you make a mistake or fall short of your ideas? So I think this is a good question. And one of the reasons why I think this is a good question is because it expands our idea of what stress is, right? So a lot of times we think stress is tied to responsibility and having multiple or competing responsibilities. But stress goes beyond that. One of the things that I've been looking at as I try to be a little more mindful of the stress that I cause in my life is some of the things that I used to think were fun also cause stress. So this is a good question because again, it makes us expand our idea on what stress is. So how stressed do you become when you make a mistake or fall short of your ideals? So it's levels, right? I've gotten a little better. I can see I've gotten a little better as it relates to stress and mistakes, right? So when I make a mistake, I used to get stuck on the mistake, analyzing all the ways I could have done it differently. You know, hindsight is 2020. I just get stressed, right? Trying to figure out a better way that I could have handled this, right? But now it's gotten a little shorter. Where before I used to be stuck for days trying to process this. Now I was like, oh man, Anthony, you could have did better. Or oh man, that was dumb. Or something like that. Still working on self-talk, how I talk to myself, make sure I'm saying I take accountability, but still in that accountability, still speaking to myself positive. So I see some growth in how I talk to myself or how long it takes me to process a mistake. Now, when I fall short of my ideals, I get stuck. And stuck in that sense where it brings the emotions of shame. And we talked about how easily it is to slide from feeling shame to being ashamed. So when I fall short of my ideals, I struggle a little bit because I have to deal with the emotions that not always, I've had a very interesting relationship with, like that idea of shame and being ashamed, right? So it is a space where I'm still growing. A lot of my value, a lot of my self-worth is tied to being moral or righteous. I'll tell you in a heartbeat, I'm a righteous man. So when I fall short of that righteousness, I can be very difficult or are very hard on myself, right? Next way, we're going to look at our moral ego and if we are functioning in it with a healthy way is through judgment of others, how we judge others, right? First question: how often do I evaluate whether people are behaving badly? How often do you evaluate whether people are behaving badly? This is a mixed thing for me, right? Because when it comes to adults, I still have a tendency to be like, that was bad, right? We're learning that a lot of these things are neutral and we assign the label of good or bad to these very neutral events, right? One of the reasons I'm a little better as it relates to adults is because of my experience working with children, right? We learned, or I've learned, and I help other people to learn and caution them around calling children bad, right? We call them bad enough that winds up becoming their identity. So now they behave bad because we have labeled them as bad. And the ironic thing about that labeling them as bad, most of the time they are doing things that children would do, the normal child behaviors. But we don't allow the space for children to be children. We want them to be little adults and behave like adults and have the understanding like adults. We don't leave that space, right? So in working with children and families, I really had the opportunity to be careful about what I label bad. But when I move beyond children, it still becomes a little difficult to apply that same understanding as it relates to adults. So, how often are you labeling behaviors of people as good or bad? Do I frequently think they should know better? Do you frequently think they should know better? I'm laughing because the answer to that is no, right? One of the reasons why my answer is that is no, because of my relationship with the knowledge ego. I generally think people are dumb. And it's funny because in society we have these things that we use instead of just calling people dumb. We have these beautiful ways to say that we think people are dumb. For example, one of the things that's been going crazy online right now is the reading level of most adults in the United States. What is that, a fourth grade reading level? That is a gentle way of calling people dumb. I talked about when I studied mathematics, and we talked about 85% of the people are dumb, deaf, and blind. And they believe the lies of the 10%. We talked about that a bunch, right? So I don't really talk about people in terms of they should know better because I generally think a lot of people aren't intelligent enough. Of course, I'm working on my relationship with that knowledge ego, so I don't think that I'm the authority on intelligence, but I do recognize that's where that space is. So to that question, I don't really say they should know better. I just think that they should. Now, where what does come into play is with myself. I will drop that on me in a heartbeat. I should have known better. That is one of those harsh self-talk tones that I can take with myself when I make a mistake or fall short. I will say that in a heartbeat. You should have known better. You should have known better. I don't even give myself the grace for being human, right? Or being empathetic or being understanding. I just tell myself I should have known better. So I don't do it to people as much as I say that statement to myself. So do you say it to yourself as well? Next, do you divide people into good or bad? We can skip that one because that's kind of like the last question we just answered. So the next we'll look at this moral ego in terms of being right, and not right with necessarily answers, but behaving right, doing the right things, right? So first question is, am I more concerned with being helpful or morally right? Being helpful or morally right? I guess that depends on the context, right? Are you more concerned with being helpful or morally right? I guess that depends on the context. When it comes to people outside my circle of trust or loved ones, families, friends, the people that I say I love, I am more concerned about being helpful, right? But when it comes to, for example, parents, the one thing I wind up focusing on is being morally right. One of the things that I say a lot, and I say it to friends all the time, you trying to punch your own ticket to heaven, whatever that may be, whether you have that heaven on earth or heaven after in the afterlife or anywhere in between. I generally always say you trying to punch your own ticket to heaven. So one of the things that I say that adds to that a lot is, as a son, I have a moral duty to honor thy mother and father. And notice the word is honor, and it's not always respect, right? It is honor. And in honoring them, that means I create a good name. I remember growing up, whenever people would find out that I was intelligent or I did this or I did something that they deemed good, they'd always say, your parents raised you right. So I do know that there are people attached to my name, first and last name, right? And in that, I do hold myself to a moral ground of being a good representative of that familial name or that family tribe, period. So for me, it really depends on the context, on if I'm more concerned on being helpful or morally right, right? So in being that morally right, I can be very unhelpful. I will leave you alone to deal with your own problems as long as I am honoring mine, right? I am honoring mine. Next question is, do I struggle when others disagree with my values or beliefs? No. I don't struggle when they disagree. Well, scratch. I do struggle not when they disagree, but if they don't see the value or see how my opinion can also be true. There's more than one truth, right? Two things can be true at the same time, right? So when that struggle shows up, it's not because they disagree, because I understand that you can have a very different perspective. It's when they approach my perspective as though it is wrong, or as though my perspective or values aren't founded in something that can keep us grounded, right? One of the reasons we approach the show the way we do is to take the mysticism out of a lot of things that we do. I just seen somebody ask a question about faith the other day, and they were asking from the perspective that faith, blind faith, is some sort of mystical thing. And one of the things that I said or we've learned as we built our relationship or reshaped our relationship with faith and hope, that faith is the destination and hope is the path that we take to get there, right? So all of this, we try to remove the mysticism from a lot of the things that we're doing because it's not magic. It is grounded in science. Even when we're talking about religion, if we remove the mysticism, we can see the foundation is in science, right? So I don't struggle when they disagree. I struggle when they devalue my perspective. And it's funny, one of the things that winds up being one of my triggers is let's agree to disagree. I do know that is it is one of those southern shade statements like bless your heart. So although on the surface it seems good, if you know about southern shade, when somebody tells you bless your heart, they could mean bless your heart, or they could mean I think you kind of slow, right? So it winds up being a dynamic, a dynamic like that, right? You just got to, you don't have to agree. You can live by your own standards. But still, I prefer, or it's easier for me to accept a disagreement when you see the value in mine, right? And I'm very good at communicating the value, where it came from, the science behind it, all these things. I make it very difficult for you to be like, that's not true. Although people will still do it because they may not have the same knowledge or the same tools or the same experiences I have, it doesn't mean that mine is any less right, right? You just don't know, right? And then I do understand that some people function within blind faith, right? They just, I'm just going to believe it because it's what we've always been taught and how we've always done it, right? And that it winds up not allowing you to grow as new information comes into play, right? Next question. Do I feel compelled to point out when others are wrong? Sometimes, but I generally still don't say it. It winds up being one of those internal battles where I can know you're wrong. I just have to see if it's value in me help guiding you to how that may be short-sighted or wrong. I what? Do not cast your pearls among swine. Do not plant your seeds on unfertile land. All those little cliches come into play when it comes to this dynamic, right? So I pointing out someone else wrong or how wrong they may be adds stress to your life because generally what you say is not going to change your mind. It's not this magical world where once new information comes in, people receive that information and change their mind. Cognitive dissonance is a real thing. People are afraid of change. We confuse the familiar with safe. So your new ideas, no matter how true and based in research they are perceived as dangerous. Dangerous. Next, we're going to see how we function with our moral ego as it relates to guilt and responsibility. Remember, there's a difference between accountability and responsibility. Responsibility requires you to do something about it. So it's guilt and responsibility. Do I carry guilt for things that may not be my responsibility? Do you carry guilt for things that may not be your responsibility? Do you carry guilt for things that may not be your responsibility? Yes. Now, that yes is also coming from the standpoint that I've gotten better. One of the ways I've gotten better is recognizing what is my burden to carry and who has placed their burdens and responsibilities on me, right? So when it comes to many things, the relationships that I interact, especially when those relationships come to a place of separation, I do have a battle with guilt. Um, when there's a disconnect, I do have a battle with guilt, right? Or so, for example, we having a little disconnect within our family, and I do feel a little guilty as it relates to my interactions with my own mom, because for so long I've helped her carry her burden, her emotions, and now I have given that cross back where I have my own emotional burdens to carry. And there is a space where I feel a little guilt because I know they are struggling to bear the weight of their own cross. And I have to coach myself out of feeling that guilt, allowing people to make mistakes and be responsible for their own choices, their own life, their own growth, their own evolution, their own everything. Especially when it comes to people that I love or care about. There is some guilt when I choose myself over them. I do feel bad. I do feel, right? So there is some guilt for things that I may not be responsible. And I literally have to give myself permission to not feel as though it's my job because I have the tools to fix those things. It's not my job. We all are accountable and responsible for our own lives. And I have to give myself permission to allow people to be accountable and responsible for theirs, right? And I think it kind of came to the head when we started this Soul Swami path. It got pointed out with an ex when she told me I gotta you gotta let me make my own mistakes. And then when we got on this path, it kind of came to a head where I want to be the best version of me, and being the best version of me requires me to take some of the rocks out my bag so my bag can be light enough for me to carry and have the space for me to put new experiences inside that bag. Do you feel responsible for fixing problems, protecting others, or preventing mistakes? I just said yes. I answered that question. I had to get that pointed out. At one time in my own life and career, I was a person that made a good career out of fixing problems. But fixing those other people's problems caused unsurmountable levels of stress for myself. It wound up being so stressful. I remember I talked about it one time. I got so stressed out that I had to take some FMLA because I was fixing problems and putting out fires all the time. I do have a problem with wanting to protect my friends and families, the people I lead. I want to protect them. One of the reasons why the people I used to lead would trust me is because I would protect them. I talk about them now, and I still say they just need some protection. So, in me, because I am a protective person, I have to make sure that I create boundaries for myself so that I won't have to deal with the guilt and responsibility of protection of others, right? And I can be hard on myself and others when I am trying to help them escape mistakes. my bro boy, when I was talking about that thing where he told me I'm an asset, he also said they're going to have to regret this the rest of their life. And I know his intentions were to make me feel better, but they didn't, because of this dynamic right here, the guilt and responsibility. I don't want my people to make mistakes. I don't want kids to make mistakes. I don't want my lady to make mistakes. I don't want my brothers to make mistakes. I don't want that. But we learn a lot from mistakes. As a matter of fact, when I was talking in the group meditation that we had, one of the things that I thought about when I processed it is how much we have learned about ourselves and how much we have grown from the mistakes that we have made. They change us just as much as our successes. Sometimes our mistakes change us more than our successes. So I recognize that I'm still working on my relationship with fixing problems, protecting others, and preventing mistakes. Next question is Is it difficult to forgive myself? Is it difficult for you to forgive yourself? The answer to that question is yes. Even though I've gotten better, right? I give myself permission to forgive myself. Even though I've gotten better, I still got a long way to go. I will think about my mistakes and still process on ways that I can do it a little bit differently, or what could I have done differently with my hindsight. That's 2020. I really still struggle to forgive myself. This process of evolving, I had to reshape my relationship with that word forgiveness, because people will, or we can be socialized into thinking forgiveness is a weakness. I know it was one person that I worked with all the time. They hated the fact that they forgive people. Or I talked to somebody before and I asked them what their relationship is with forgiveness. They were like, I don't forgive. And I asked them, well, what happens when you have to forgive yourself? They sat there for a minute and recognized how they don't forgive themselves because they don't forgive other people. That same idea on their thoughts on forgiveness applies to forgiving yourself, right? So one of the things that I really do try to work to do is create a space where I can forgive myself, right? One of the 7 spaces that we talked about it's a huge space, a space for forgiveness of yourself and others, right? And it's important because you will make mistakes. But your mistakes are not your identity. They do not define you. They just define an action that you took. They are not who you are. I don't care how many mistakes you've made. They are not who you are. They are not the definition or the identity, the total identity of who you are. Last group of questions relate to how we function with our moral ego and recognition. Recognition. Moral ego and recognition. So, first question is, do you secretly hope others notice how much you sacrifice, help, or care? Do you secretly notice do you secretly hope others notice how much you sacrifice, help, or care? For me, that answer is yes. I think in a space, now this isn't me saying that this is the truth. This is me saying how I think. I think in a space of value, that's important. to be able to notice how much you sacrifice, how much I help, or how much I care. And it really does hurt my feelings. The stories I tell myself become hurtful stories when I feel unseen or unappreciated. And the way that I feel are not valued. The way that I feel seen, valued, and appreciated is when people recognize my sacrifices, how much I care, or how helpful I try to be. Is it important? I know parents, I think in parenting, that idea of sacrifice becomes important. Because Lord forbid a child does something that the parent feels as though they're not appreciating their sacrifice. But that idea of two things can be true at the same time. I can appreciate the sacrifice that you made, but also be aware of the harms of that sacrifice. For example, I appreciate my parents for going to work and doing what's necessary to provide for their family. But I also get to see the harms of that. Like my parents, both of them joined the military, right? Good intentions. It did create a path for them to be able to provide for their children, right? But if you were raised as a military brat, you also get the first-hand view of the harms of that sacrifice, right? You struggle to make long-term friendships because you move so often. How you value people in your life changes because of how often you move. The amount of time that you wind up having to be without a parent because they've been stationed somewhere else, right? You get to see that firsthand. And the parents, they're focusing on the sacrifice that they're making for the kids. That's that idea of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They have the best intentions. But in those intentions also create somewhat of a hell for those who also function in those intentions or in those sacrifices. So for myself, I do. And it is secretly. I do want to be seen. I will tell you. I will say it and confidently express how I'd like to be seen, right? So do you secretly hope others notice how much you sacrifice, help, or care? Do I feel hurt when my good intentions aren't recognized? So for that, no. I don't necessarily need my good intentions to be recognized because of the statement I've probably already said 10 times on this show and 1,000 times over the last couple of years. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So I leave that space to know that even though I may have had the best intentions, I could definitely have caused some problems, right? So it doesn't matter if my good intentions are recognized, if my good intentions have created a hell for someone else. What needs to be addressed is the hell that I created. I cannot battle the harm that I gave you with, well, I had good intentions. Yeah, congratulations. Because this is the outcome. Great job. You had good intentions when you did that. But this is the outcome. This is the harm that it caused me, right? So I really don't feel hurt when people don't recognize my good intentions, because if my good intentions aren't creating those good outcomes, my good intentions don't really matter. Doesn't really matter. If it caused harm, it doesn't matter, right? There's still some value to my good intentions, but those good intentions do not change the harm. So it does not matter. So do you feel hurt when your good intentions aren't recognized? Think about that from a parental perspective. If you have children, think about it from being a child Think about it from being a partner, a lover, a friend. Think about that like in all the relationships that you may have and all the faces and different dynamics that those relationships take on. Do you feel hurt when your good intentions are not recognized? Last question. Do you feel unappreciated for doing the right thing? Last question. Do you feel unappreciated for doing the right thing? Oh man, I don't really know. Part of me says yes, and part of me says no. So it really is based on my intention. So if I am doing the right thing for myself, I don't really feel unappreciated. When I'm doing the right thing for others, I can be unappreciated if they don't value me doing the right thing, right? If they don't value me doing the right thing, I can feel unappreciated. Me doing the right thing for myself, I feel appreciated. I appreciate me making good choices for my life. I'm thankful that I've made a series of good choices, even though I've made some bad choices and made some mistakes. Overall, my good decision making is way higher than my bad decision making. I've made way more good decisions than I have bad decisions, right? So I appreciate valuing myself enough to make good decisions for my life, right? And not being attached to a victim or the experiences I had or anything like that, right? But I definitely want to be recognized for doing the right thing by you. So if I'm doing the right thing for others, I definitely do want that appreciation. And if it isn't given to me in a way that I recognize, I have the tendency to feel as though I'm not appreciated. One of the best questions that I started asking in relationships is, well, how do you show me that you appreciate me? Because I know I had ideas on what that looked like. So I'll be looking for the way I value appreciation. And I miss all the ways that they might be showing it that's out of how I would have thought. That's one of the better questions I've asked, I've added when it comes to relationship, whether it be friendships, whether it be romantic, whether it be work, is how do you show your value and appreciation? And you'll be amazed because people have answers. And you be amazed on how many of those answers you have overlooked yourself. You aren't showing that appreciation for them doing the right thing by you. So, family, that is us. It's the questions that we'll have to be able to allow us to assess how we are functioning in our healthy ego. Our healthy moral ego. If you had some questions that weren't necessarily affirmative or they weren't in a way that shows that you are functioning within your moral ego in a healthy way, it's good because now you are accountable, right? You've identified what they are. You've given them a name. You see the areas that you need to grow, what part. And now you can move into a space of responsibility because it is your responsibility to grow from what you know and what you have learned. So Thursday, family, we will go back to the Iron Man mask photo. Not photo, but puzzle. We're doing pretty good with that 3D puzzle. It's been interesting. but enjoyable at the same time. Also, it's an open forum, so you can ask the questions or anything that you're curious about. Have some great discussions during that time when we are on mobile. If you can't make it Thursday at 7 p.m., I hope to see you back here Tuesday, where we will be assessing how we function. We have two more egos to do. It's the victim ego, which is next, and then the spiritual ego, which is after that. So we have two more egos that we want to address, and then we'll move on. So if you can't make it Thursday, I hope to see you back here Tuesday as we assess how we function within our victim ego. As always, I appreciate your time and your energy. You could have been anywhere else on this planet, but you chose to spend a little time with us. And for that, I am grateful. And with that being said, I wish you blessings and many more blessings and blessings upon blessings. And I wish you peace, family. Peace.